It makes it feel the seizing of the passports does to me, Buck, and I think I would continue to hammer on this if I were the Trump people, if I'm Republicans attacking this truly extraordinary, never happened before in the history of American judicial system, investigation of a former president by a current sitting president who might be running against him. It makes it feel like a fishing expedition, as opposed to this targeted strike designed to try and get specific documents which were incredibly important to the well-being and safety and health of our country. They sent in 20-plus FBI agents to grab whatever they could, and they were so lacking in specificity, Buck. It was such a fishing expedition that they grabbed the former president's passports, which is a big deal. Begin with more of the continuing fallout from the FBI's, but frankly, indefensible, it appears, more and more every single day, raid on Donald Trump's private residence at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. So, a couple of details that are out. Wall Street Journal reports today that Merrick Garland debated for weeks whether to officially endorse the warrants in this case or not and allow the search to take place at Mar-a-Lago. That certainly calls into question this idea that the warrants had to be granted because there were such alarming circumstances surrounding these confidential materials that Trump reportedly had at Mar-a-Lago. If you truly were concerned about national security, first of all, maybe you get them in the first 18 months of the Biden presidency. Second, how do you debate whether or not to grant these warrants as the attorney general for weeks if it is such a clear-cut case? I think, Buck, what happened was Maggie Haberman at the New York Times wrote a story with a picture, I believe it was, about Trump destroying documents. And there was a picture like from a toilet or something, if I remember correctly, that was in her story. And I think that's what put Merrick Garland personally over the hump here. Now, in addition to the fact that he debated for weeks, and it calls into question whether there were any exigent circumstances necessitating this warrant. Also, Buck, we broke the story yesterday. I mean, Trump did on his Truth Social account. This search is supposed to be severely curtailed, specific in nature. Instead, it appears that the FBI went in, Buck, and just hoovered up as much as they possibly could, including 3 different passports for President Donald Trump. 2 expired. 1, as you suggested, might be the case, a diplomatic passport that is still in effect. They then had their stooges in the media report that they hadn't done it before having to acknowledge that they had, in fact, seized these passports. And now there is going to be a hearing on Thursday afternoon, early on Thursday afternoon, about whether the full affidavit to support the granting of this warrant should be released to the public as well. The Department of Justice vociferously opposed to that idea. This would be a big win for Trump, and it's, I think, evidence that this all of the details surrounding this warrant search at Mar-a-Lago are starting to fall apart in rapid order.
It's looking like the Democrat plan for the election is what some would call lawfare, as in they're just using the legal apparatus as a weapon of politics in every way they possibly can. Obviously, first and foremost with the Mar-a-Lago raid, but let's also keep in mind that you just had Rudy Giuliani announced yesterday officially as another target of a federal investigation looking into the electors scheme, the alternate electors slate. And every time I read this, they try to use all these words. It's, false and willfully and knowingly. And the truth of the matter is that bad faith is something that Democrats have perfected with the Russia collusion lie. Bad faith operation of government at the FBI, at the DOJ, the intelligence community. And now they want to criminalize what they say is bad faith on the other side by Trump's lawyers. Essentially, they find a way to use the process they believe to their advantage. It doesn't succeed, and then they get federally charged anyway. I mean, they're going to lock up Rudy Giuliani, the guy who turned New York City around, one-time presidential candidate, by the way, himself. They're bringing all these different suits, Clay. I mean, this is the plan. They can't win based on the Democrat or Biden record going into this midterm, and they know it. So they're doing all this stuff. I do believe if they unleash the affidavit, unveil, unseal is the word I'm looking for. The affidavit's not like, rawr, doesn't need to be unleashed. If they
unveil, it could be fun too, though.
That would be interesting. Remember the old, what was it? The old fruit punch commercial with the big pitcher that would bust through the walls. You remember that one?
The Hawaiian
punch. Yeah.
Yeah.
The affidavit could come flying out like that. But here's the problem with releasing the affidavit, I think, or I shouldn't say the problem. If they release it and it's flimsy, the Democrats are just toast on this one. If they release it and it's Trump, remember, I made a joke about this. I just reminded this last night. I said, it's not like Trump has the nuclear codes under his pillow the day of the raid, before the nuclear story broke a few days later. So sure enough, this is what they're saying. And if they are making allegations, Clay, of extreme seriousness in the documents, they're going to have to charge somebody, or else what was this all about, right? So that's the release of the affidavit is no minor thing, because it either makes this thing look like a big belly flop for the libs, or it means there's an indictment coming down.
Well, the fact...
by the way, I think they won't unseal it, just to be clear. I don't believe they will unseal it.
That's what the Department of Justice... What's rapidly happened here is it feels like there was a game of chicken going on. And Merrick Garland came out, was it Thursday, Buck? Thursday afternoon last week. And he said, we're happy to release the details on the warrant. And it was like he was daring Trump to okay it. And then Trump said, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and release the details on the warrant. And last night, Trump said, hey, I want this affidavit released as well. And now the Department of Justice is like, no, we can't do that. Now, one thing I will say, and you know this better than anybody, the affidavit, if it comes out, is likely to be so redacted in terms of what is written and what is allowed to be seen there, that we may not get any real sense for what is in it, just because so much of it's going to be blacked out, because they're going to argue the Department of Justice
possibility. And we're also never going to see. Never. I mean, Trump could be facing prosecution sitting in court, and they're going to be saying these documents are too secret.
Too severe.
I mean, this is one of the legal strategies in the past that people use is something called gray mail, and that's where the government says, here's the secret stuff that this person did, and then they try to get the judge to say, it's not that secret, release it, and the government response is, well, we can't actually have people know what's in there, so I guess we're going to have to drop the charges. Now, they've tried to figure out procedures so that that doesn't happen, but gray mail is something that the government has to be aware of generally in national security prosecutions of secret information. And I'm just saying right now, they're not. I don't think they're going to unseal the affidavit, Clay. They're never going to release the actual documents, because if they actually show you the documents, then what's the point of prosecuting Trump for the possible exposure to the public of the documents?
I just also, there's so much still to unpack here. Let's not underrate that they managed to seize the passports. Because yesterday, Buck, when this came out, I think I said maybe they accidentally took them. And you were like, they accidentally took the passport. What is going on in terms of their search? They were there 9 hours. It's not like they went in, Buck, and said, okay, there's 9 boxes here. Let's grab them all. I would imagine, I don't know about you, but my wife is in charge of our passports because she doesn't trust me to be able to keep up with them. And so I never really know where our passports are in the house, right? Like my wife and the kids' passports and everything else. But I would think that that they're probably not, that Trump's passport is probably, Buck, not under lock and key in the basement of Mar-a-Lago, right? That would seem to be a really poor choice by Trump, just in terms of being able to find it. This feels like something that they hoovered up and grabbed as much as they possibly could and didn't even look at all these documents.
Well, that
makes
had
9 hours.
That makes sense from the perspective of the people who ordered this and went about it. Meaning, this raid on Mar-a-Lago against Donald Trump was clearly, I mean, you said, they're now reporting Merrick Garland did the whole should I, shouldn't I thing.
Yes.
because even he knows, as much as they hate Trump, now they're trying to act like, oh, just, it's a procedure, it's the law. No, this was a huge deal. I know our audience knows that, but we need to remind ourselves of this because there's going to be gaslighting. Oh, it was just they just went in to get. No, this is a major thing. And there's a bit of an insurance policy that both the politicized Democrats like Garland, as well as the bureaucracy and the deep staters have here by getting as much as possible. Because, okay, maybe they decide not to go all in, depending on how the affidavit goes and everything else, on the classified documents part of this, Clay. And they can make the argument that I just said out loud, which is it's too sensitive, so we have the documents now, but we can't expose this to the public. They push that away. But by hoovering everything, maybe they get some interesting January 6th stuff that's not even about criminal prosecution, of course, but that will get selectively leaked to the press, and it gives them political ammunition and cover for the raid when as this rolls on.
It makes it feel the seizing of the passports does to me, Buck, and I think I would continue to hammer on this if I were the Trump people, if I'm Republicans attacking this truly extraordinary, never happened before in the history of American judicial system, investigation of a former president by a current sitting president who might be running against him. It makes it feel like a fishing expedition, as opposed to this targeted strike designed to try and get specific documents which were incredibly important to the well-being and safety and health of our country. They sent in 20-plus FBI agents to grab whatever they could, and they were so lacking in specificity, Buck. It was such a fishing expedition that they grabbed the former president's passports, which is a big deal, all right? Because we talked about this yesterday, and I said, man, this is something you do when you're trying to keep somebody from fleeing the country after you've already charged them of a crime. And I was operating under the assumption that it was intentional because I was thinking there's no way you accidentally end up with the president's passports unless you are grabbing so much material, to your point, that it's such a fishing expedition. You're hoovering up everything that you can, and then you have your team go over it all, hoping to find something that you can allege is a major violation by Trump.
They used the word unprecedented so many times when Trump was president, and then people had to point out, no, here are the precedents. They do unprecedented things against Trump and expect us not to remember and not to notice. I mean, they went in, remember, they seized Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyers. They seized his records. They did a raid of his home. They have been fighting to unseal Trump's taxes. They have seized now thousands of pages of documents from his home. They have gotten so much, they've gone so all out and so scorched earth. And Clay, they keep coming up with nothing. This is the part of this that's so amazing. If Trump was the evil Machiavellian genius that they seem to think he is, or just the evil thug that they say he is, don't we think they would have gotten something? Wouldn't the smoking gun have actually been a gun that was smoking at some point? But no, we get this instead. So we all see what's going on here. I believe it was Norah O'Donnell yesterday who broke the very important story that they did not take the passports from Donald Trump's residence. Psych, they actually did, and there's paperwork proving it, and now the DOJ in writing has admitted it. So glad her sources are so ironclad on that one. But here is also Norah O'Donnell, a mouthpiece for the regime, telling everybody that the DOJ is asking a judge not to release the affidavit about the raid.
The Justice Department is asking a judge not to release the affidavit that contains key details about why the FBI searched former President Trump's Florida mansion last week. The DOJ says releasing that document would be detrimental to the, quote, integrity of the investigation. This comes as members of Congress from both parties today are demanding more details and are asking the Director of National Intelligence for a damage assessment following reports that documents labeled top secret were found at Mar-a-Lago.
Oh, clutch the pearls, top secret. First of all, what does that even mean? All right, Clay, if someone intercepts a conversation between me and you talking about how you like turkey sandwiches for lunch, somebody may classify that as top secret. Second of all, a former president and future presidential candidate isn't just somebody when it comes to an affidavit here. The public has a right to know. The political question here has risen beyond what the normal legal circumstances, I think, would justify. So if they don't release it, I think it looks bad for them. What do you say?
I agree 100%. It also looks bad for Norah O'Donnell, who still has a tweet up saying that they didn't seize these passports. Like, this is an example. We talk all the time about how social media has different rules for different people. There's no Twitter fact check. 40,000 people liked it. 13,000 people shared it. According to a DOJ official, the FBI is not in possession of former President Trump's passports. Trump had accused the FBI of stealing his 3 passports during the search of his Mar-a-Lago home. That's 100% a lie. And the tweet is still up. There's no follow-up tweet saying, hey, this was actually incorrect. It turns out that the Department of Justice was in possession of Trump's passports, as he had correctly said. And you might say, well, why does this matter? Well, 40,000 people are liking and sharing and commenting, maybe more than that, on this tweet, which is 100% inaccurate. And Buck, you talked about yesterday, how often our tweets about COVID that ended up being true, and they would have the little fact check label, or even our podcast for a while. I don't know if it still has the podcast label, but people started sharing.
Go to Fauci for real information about COVID if you're a moron.
People were sharing all the different podcasts and tweets that we would share that came with a COVID signifier underneath it that said, this information about COVID is disputed. Yeah, we ended up being right about everything, but that's where the world was. They're not doing anything about Norah O'Donnell's lies. Why not? Good question to be asking.